G'day everyone, thanks for joining us. Here we have the full build video of the Trumpeter E-100 135 scale. It is a very quick build. There's only roughly about 100 parts in it, and they all go together really well. So that's going to be fairly quick. We're not going to show you most of that. It's pretty basic and straightforward, and we'll get on with the rest of it. But yeah, enjoy. A little bit of sanding required on the suspension, bottom of the suspension arms. There's a few seam lines to get rid of, as well as on the road wheels. Other than that, it's all pretty neat. As I was saying, the fit on this kit is excellent. The underneath of the turret's really the only place I needed to put a little bit of filler, other than the front of the hull. The front of the hull is just tiny little gaps there that I touched up. The gun barrel goes together nice and easily. Yeah, everything else is just a breeze. And you can see the modeler's multi-tool there. Love them. Alright, just attaching the Photo-etch. I use a bit of Bob Smith Industries super glue. I love this stuff, works really well. I secure the Photo-etch pieces in place rather with a little bit of Tamiya tape and a little bit of blue tack actually, just to hold them down, make sure they don't shift during the rest of the construction. Right, here you see the kit instructions for painting. There's two designs on there, both of them look pretty good. We're not going to be using those. So Model Military International magazine in 2011 covered this vehicle, and the modeler that covered it actually did a really nice what if example, sort of like I think he calls it in the article a Frankenstein tank, so it's got bits and pieces everywhere. He uses the, I think it was a Kamet aftermarket crop turret, but you can now get this kit with the crop turret anyway if you want it. And I just try to replicate what he's doing. So you see here, I'm just testing out some of the Vallejo paints that I'll be using just to see what shades I'm going to use and how the paint goes down when it's thin, and just checking everything out. Once I've done with this stage and I'm happy with it, I'll put this paint aside and I'll actually just go and do some pre-shading with some burnt umber. you see here, there's the only 2 injection pin marks that I need to fix on the whole kit really. Just on the underside of the hole there. Everything else is hidden really well, and those 2 are really unavoidable but easy to fix. Now I'm starting to apply the sand yellow that I thinned down before. I did it very, very thin. You don't really need to thin the Model Air Vallejo paints all that much, but I actually thinned this 50-50. Just wanted it nice and light so I don't erase the pre-shading, and I've got plenty of time to work up. You'll see, I'll point out a little bit, I actually oversprayed it a bit too close to the model and a bit heavy with the airbrush. If you do that, just a little tip, just leave it. Don't try to fix it, don't try to wipe it off, anything like that. You probably just end up damaging the paintwork around it. So you'll see me point to it in a minute. It's a little hard to spot on the video. Here we go. Ta-da! There we go, too heavy. So I just left that and continued on and came back and just resprayed over it later, and it was fine. Here I used the 50-50 mix, as it says in the description there, fire red and armor brown. It really was too dark. I'll come back over this later and hit it with pretty much just a fire red, just to tone down the depth of it. It was just too deep and really didn't look like the primer oxide colour I'm going for. You can see the side skirt there, how dark it is. It just, yeah, it wasn't working, so we fixed it up a little bit later. My camera stand also decided to jump off the cliff, so to speak, and you can see it landed directly on my work, so it scratched the heck out of the panels that I was working on. I decided just to touch them up. If you could see it later, then I was going to do a little bit of creative painting with some chipping paintwork, things like that, but it hides them really well. You don't see them later. Okay, so here you see we're working with a bit of the sand yellow and the Model Air white. It's only about 20% Model Air white, if that, just to tone down the colours, give them a few highlights. Later on I'll move to the AK Interactive Dunkel Gelb RAL 7028, and that just gives me a really nice bright highlight. Once I clear coat the model, it tones everything down a fair bit, so I sort of overdo this step a little bit with the next colour, just to increase the contrast. And here you see I'm doing the front right fender or side skirt, and I do those in a couple of different colours and a few different paint schemes just to make it look like they've been borrowed from other vehicles. Here's the burnt umber with the fire red over the top, and that's really the red primer colour that I was looking to achieve on the other parts, and I'll go back and respray those. Okay, so I want this panel to look like it's come off a vehicle that was painted in the, was it 1/3 paint scheme, I think they used to call it, that they did on some of the Panthers. So it's basically a primer red, bit of sand yellow, and a bit of white. I don't actually think they went to this much trouble to paint it, but I thought, let's have a bit of fun. So we do that. Paint the barrel as well. The barrel goes together really beautifully. I didn't have much issue with seams at all. I just used the dark grey for this, add a bit of white to it to do some highlights as well before we put it on the vehicle. And here we go, painting all the road wheels just with a thin coat of Vallejo Multicolor oily steel. Because it's metal on metal, so basically the road wheels didn't have any rubber on them, they're going to be on the tracks, it's going to wear quite well. I do a thin coat and you'll see why I'm not too pedantic at this stage. I just want to get a bit of paint on there. Alright, using a bit of Vallejo liquid mask. I love this stuff. I don't know what I would have done without this. I just love it, can't get enough of it. So using liquid mask, we're just going to do one of the sort of the late war designs with the circles and everything. And we're going to paint that green over the top with that and then just peel it off. It's going to look a bit rough, but I want it to look like it's come off a previous vehicle or a different vehicle. Alrighty, so here I'm using a technique which you've probably seen before. Using a graphite stick 6B, so it's a nice soft one, and also use a pencil as well, same 6B. There you go, and just burnish it up with the cotton bud there, just to get it nice and shiny. I love the effect that you get from this. It's pretty simple. You can do the same thing with powders though if you prefer. Now the model's already been clear coated, so you'll see me do the decals after that, and then I'll clear coat it again once the decals are set. I wanted 007 now, not for James Bond, but some of you might recall that Michael Whitman's last Tiger tank was 007. So since this was a what if tank and it's 1946, I thought, well, you know what? Maybe Michael Whitman survived to crew this vehicle as well, and he kept that number. Let's have a bit of fun with it, eh? Now, one thing that the modeler did in the article that I really like was some factory chalk markings on the side of the hull here where the red primer is. So just indicating where cuts will be made, or notes to the builders and anything like that. I thought, what a great idea. So I've copied that on there and I seal that in when I seal the decals. And you'll see it dulls down after it's been sealed in, but I thought, yeah, let's have a bit of fun. Now, you would have heard me say many times on my other videos, I never have a problem with vinyl tracks. Well, I did this time. No matter what I did, I could not get them to glue together. So I used Bob Smith Industries, let it set. It didn't take, and I thought maybe it's got a bit of paint on it. You see me flake all the paint off where the Bob Smith Industries glue was. Do it again, doesn't work. Once it doesn't work for the second time, I try modeler's glue, which it says to in the instructions. I've never done the modeler's glue before. That didn't work very well either. In the end, I gave up and just stapled it. And you'll see later there's a ton of staples in it, and that's just because I thought, well, I don't want it popping off after I've started the weathering and everything, and I can hide the staples under the side skirt armour anyway, so it's not the end of the world. This is one of my favourite parts of weathering the vehicle, is just doing the sponge chipping and then reworking it later with a brush. I chip with a bit of the hull red, and then I use the dark rust as well on some of the areas just to indicate some older chipping. Sponge chipping the road wheels. I come back with the paintbrush later and add some more finer chips. I don't show you most of this, it's all pretty straightforward, and you see me doing the rest of the hull anyway. You'll notice in some of the photos at the end I've left that hatch out for the time being. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to include it as it is or alter it, so I just left it off in the photos until I've made my mind up. Chances are I'll probably just put it back on. Alrighty, Tamiya Brown panel liner. Love this stuff. Just use it to get some of the rivet details or some of the bolt heads, things like that, just to stand out a bit more, give them a bit of depth. I'm not going to apply it as a wash across the whole surface of the vehicle. I don't really need to, so I'm just going to do it as a pin wash. I pretty much use this for most of the kit. I use Tamiya black on the whole sides, the red sides, and also a tiny bit on the engine deck just to replicate some oil spills. Alrighty, time for the oil paint. So I use the Tai Lung paint range as well as some of the Winsor & Newton paint range as well. Just burnishing it into the surface with an old brush. I'm not trying to cover the whole surface, I'm just trying to highlight little areas, giving a little modulation effect on some of the areas. Some of it shows really well on the camera, some of it doesn't, but it's overall fairly subtle. Here you see the Winsor Newton burnt umber, so I'm using that to do the rust and dirt streaks down the side of the vehicle, just to dirty it up a little bit, make it look a bit worn. I do that on the hull and also on the turret and everywhere. Now I paint some of the tools very lightly, sort of wood affected. I sort of want most of the tools to look like they've been sprayed in place. So some of them get a paint job, others don't, they just get chipping. Right, so reaching the final leg now, just putting on the weathering pigments. Start off with some darker shades in the deeper cracks and crevices of the tracks, and then I'll go on to some European dust, and it just gives me a little bit of depth. Here's a perfect example of why I swap between the pencil and the graphite stick, and you can just do whole areas with the graphite stick really easily and just select little areas with the pencil. Love it. And there we have it, Trumpeter's E-100 135 scale. Love this kit. Had an absolute ball making this. I am definitely going to be buying the one with the crop turret and making that as well. Can't recommend these kits highly enough. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you for the feedback to everyone. Without the feedback, I can't improve, so I do appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to see more videos, please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget we do a monthly kit giveaway, so keep an eye out for that, and we'll see you soon.